Saint Francis was known for opening doors. Doors to the poor. Doors to the sick. Doors to the forgotten. But there was one night. One moment buried deep in the early chronicles. When Saint Francis did something no one expected. He refused to open a door. Not because he lacked mercy. Not because he lacked courage. But because he sensed something far more dangerous than hunger or violence. This is the story of the night Saint Francis heard a knock. And realized that not every request for help is what it appears to be. It was late winter in Assisi. The kind of cold that doesn't shout, but settles slowly into the bones. The brothers had already retired for the night. The monastery was quiet except for the wind brushing against stone walls and the faint crackle of dying embers in the hearth. Francis remained awake. He often did. Prayer came to him more easily when the world slept. He knelt alone in the chapel, his hands folded, his forehead resting lightly against the wood of the pew. His prayer that night was simple. Lord, keep my heart soft. He had learned that hardness never arrives suddenly. It creeps in unnoticed. Through fatigue, disappointment, and small resentments left unexamined. Francis feared that more than hunger. More than death. And then. The knock came. It was a single knock. Not desperate. Not hurried. Measured. Francis opened his eyes. The sound came again. Slow, deliberate. Brother Rufino stirred in his cell. Father, he whispered, should I answer? Francis stood. I will, he said quietly. He wrapped his cloak tighter and walked toward the outer gate. When he opened it, a man stood there alone. Tall. Wrapped in a dark traveler's cloak. His face half hidden by shadow. I seek shelter, the man said. My journey is long, and the night is cruel. Francis studied him. The man did not shiver. Did not tremble. His voice carried no exhaustion. Only expectation. Francis felt something tighten in his chest. Francis had welcomed thieves. He had fed soldiers. He had embraced lepers. Yet something about this man was closed. Not wounded. Not desperate. Closed. You are welcome, Francis said carefully. But first, tell me your name. The man hesitated. Names are not important, he replied. Francis nodded. They are to God. The wind shifted. The man's eyes flickered, not with fear, but irritation. I ask only for shelter, he said. Is your mercy conditional? Francis felt the weight of the moment settle on him. This was not a test of generosity. It was a test of discernment. Francis leaned forward slightly. Brother, he said. Why do you knock? The man frowned. Because your door is open to all. Francis shook his head gently. No. My heart is open to all. But doors exist for a reason. The man's voice hardened. Are you refusing me? Francis closed his eyes for a brief moment. Then he spoke words that stunned the watching brothers. I am refusing what you bring. Silence. The man stepped closer. And what is that? Francis met his gaze. Division. Pride. The desire to take without being known. The man laughed softly. You monks preach mercy, he said. But when it is tested, you hide behind caution. Francis did not raise his voice. Mercy without truth becomes permission, he replied. And permission can destroy a soul. The man's expression changed. The calm broke. Who do you think you are, he hissed. To judge the heart of another? Francis answered without hesitation. I do not judge your heart. I listen to it. The wind surged suddenly. The torches along the wall flickered violently. Brother Rufino gasped. Francis stood firm. The man straightened. His voice dropped, no longer human in tone. You are different, he said. Others opened the door. Francis felt a deep sorrow rise within him. Yes, he said softly. They do. And many are wounded because of it. The man's smile was thin. You deny me entry? Francis nodded. I deny you authority. The knight seemed to recoil. Then, without anger, without threat, the man stepped back into the darkness. You have chosen well, he said. Few do. And he was gone. The gate stood open. The road beyond it was empty. Brother Rufino whispered, who was he? Francis closed the gate gently. One who feeds on confusion, he said. One who enters where discernment is absent. He turned back toward the chapel. That night, Francis prayed longer than usual. Not in fear, but in gratitude. Part 8, The Lesson Francis Taught the Brothers. The next morning, Francis gathered the brothers. He spoke plainly. Not every knock is holy. Not every request is humble. Not every open door is obedience. He paused. Love requires wisdom. Mercy requires truth. The brothers listened in silence. Francis concluded. God does not ask us to abandon discernment. He asks us to sanctify it. Most of us are taught that holiness means always saying yes. Yes to every request. Yes to every burden. Yes to every voice that claims need. But Saint Francis understood something that few are willing to say out loud. Not every knock comes from God. Some come from confusion. Some from manipulation. Some from pride disguised as desperation. And some arrive not to be healed, but to hollow us out. This is why discernment is not a lack of love. It is love with sight. Francis did not refuse the stranger because he was afraid. He refused him because he was listening. Listening not with the ears, but with a heart trained through prayer, silence, and suffering. We often think evil announces itself loudly. With violence, threats, and open hostility. But more often, it arrives politely. Calm. Reasonable. Entitled. It asks for entry without accountability. It demands mercy without humility. It wants access without surrender. Francis recognized that tone immediately. And here is the uncomfortable truth this story leaves us with. Not everything that asks for compassion deserves authority. Not everything that suffers is ready to be healed. Not every open door leads to grace. There are doors God asks us to open. To the poor. To the broken. To the repentant. To the forgotten. But there are also doors God asks us to guard. Because when discernment is abandoned, mercy becomes something else entirely. It becomes permission. It becomes enabling. It becomes surrender to confusion. Saint Francis knew that love without truth does not heal. It wounds more deeply. He also knew something even more subtle. That refusing a door does not mean refusing a soul. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is deny someone access to our weakness, our silence, our confusion. Francis did not curse the stranger. He did not threaten him. He did not argue. He simply stood firm. And firmness, when rooted in humility, is not cruelty. It is clarity. This story forces us to ask ourselves a difficult question. How many doors have we opened? Not because God asked us to, but because we were afraid to say no. How many times have we confused guilt with compassion? Pressure with obedience? Noise with need? Saint Francis reminds us that holiness is not passive. It listens. It discerns. It waits. And when necessary, it refuses. Because God does not enter hearts by force. And neither should we. There is a door in every life. A threshold where wisdom must stand guard. Where love must be filtered through truth. Where compassion must be anchored to discernment. Saint Francis teaches us that guarding that door is not a failure of mercy. It is an act of faith. And sometimes, the door we refuse to open is the one that saves us.